Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is a meeting of the Preservation Board. I'm going to call a roll to establish who's here. Commissioner Fathman, are you here?
I'm here.
Commissioner Richardson, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Visintainer, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Vines, are you here?
Here.
Have I overlooked a commissioner? Okay, I have not. That is 5 commissioners present. We can proceed. Commissioners, have you seen the agenda for this meeting? Anybody have any changes? Any announcements? Anybody recusing themselves from any issue?
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself from item C.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm not recusing, but I will just disclose that I am the newly appointed chair of the Skinker to Bolivar Commercial Districts. And I have sat in on a couple meetings that relate to this item, but I have not expressed any opinions one way or the other.
Cool.
See.
Item C. Okay, commissioners, this will then be our agenda, and as much as possible, we will try to stick to this order. In front of you, you have the October 22nd Preservation Board minutes, which are revised. They are revised after we have approved them.
No, they have not been approved.
They have not been approved. Okay, they have not been approved. The revision, as I understand it, is the board decision?
I'm sorry.
The board decision is the revision?
The revision was to reflect that, the item you're referring to had a 5-0 vote. I think on the original, the vote was omitted somehow.
Okay,
So it's passed by a majority of a quorum, and the revision reflects that.
got it. So commissioners, take a look at that, and then, has anybody read the minutes for October, November, December, and January? Commissioner Richardson?
I move that we adopt the minutes for October, November, December, and January.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved unanimously. Okay, that takes care of most of our housekeeping. Let's start the agenda. Agenda item A, 2717, Sydney. This is an exciting one. Wait till you hear why.
I can't wait.
That is Jan's excited face, by the way, everybody.
This is a preliminary review application for a large development in the Fox Park neighborhood in the Fox Park Local Historic District. And bear with us because we are not seeing exactly what you're seeing on the screen, so
Is this metaphysics or?
I have no idea. It's
Okay.
some kind of ghostly thing. This is the site at 2717 Sydney. It includes a number of structures, but the one that we're going to be dealing mostly with this evening is a one-story addition, which will be in this location. And this is the site plan. You can see that there are a number of demolitions in purple on the left-hand side of the project site. Those you'll see photos of in a minute, but they have already been approved, at least on a preliminary basis, for demolition by the director since they are non-contributing structures. The red building is the Fox Brothers warehouse, which is going to be rehabilitated. And the gray area, which is kind of unusually shaped, is the one-story addition that will be attached to it. The cutout is an existing cell tower facility. This is the proposed addition, and at the background would be the rehabilitated Fox Brothers building. This is being reviewed for the first time under the new construction policy, compatible new construction policy.
So, new.
Very new. Some renderings of the 4 elevations. The addition will be entirely brick. And the site plan. This is just directly west of Fox Park. And even though it's being reviewed under the new construction policy, this is also under the the Fox Park standards, and that does require a model example. A formal model example was not submitted, but this building serves, and it is directly opposite the side of the addition. You'll see it again in the context photos. An elevation showing the addition in context with the Fox Brothers building. This is the facade that faces Ohio. And I will come back to that in a moment. This is the rear elevation. You can see the cell tower. All of this is brick. And these are really interior elevations and won't really be street visible, but these face north. This is a shot of the context to the north of the Brothers building, Fox Brothers building. Here are the buildings proposed for demolition. This lovely metal building here. And right now we're proceeding east along what used to be a street, but it's been incorporated as an alley. So all of these. This building on the left is the only one that really has any particular architectural interest, but not very much. And they've all been pretty much altered, which is why the director decided that he could approve them prior to the board's review. All right, now we're on Victor Street, and that's the last of the demos. The Brothers warehouse, as I said, is going to be rehabilitated. We haven't gotten complete plans on that yet, but that's the building. And now we're looking back at the site, facing north and going along Ohio. What we see there is the, get this right, southeast corner of the property and looking on to Fox Park. Now we're looking back to the interior of the building, northwest, interior of the site, rather. And looking down Victor Street with the Demolitions on the right and Fox Park on the left. So the character of the neighborhood is, at this location, pretty spotty. A lot of non-conforming and incompatible uses, such as this parking lot on the right at Victor and Ohio. But a lot of the buildings are large in scale, such as this building, which is directly opposite on Ohio. Again, on the other corner, we have a U-Haul parking lot. Again, this is the proposed model example on Ohio South. And this is the streetscape directly opposite the project. North of there, the context becomes smaller with more four families, single families, and a flounder. Found a flounder. So I had to put that in. Okay. All right, so the staff looked at this from two different points of view. One under the existing Fox Park ordinance, and also under, as I said, the new construction policy. There are very similar in this particular instance as far as new construction is concerned. So primarily we are concentrating, and you see this in your agenda, on the review under the new policy. And I should state, first of all, that the required steps of review allowing participation of the neighborhood have all been completed. And at this point, I think I will submit a letter from the Fox Park Neighborhood Association in strong support of the project. However, when the staff reviewed it, we found some inconsistencies with the policy. There are certain required compatibility elements And two of these are a little questionable. One is height, because this is a one-story, and while there is a one-story directly opposite, most of the buildings are larger than that in the surrounding area. However, given that there is that one-story building, and then it in fact bookends the corner where the new addition will be, the staff supports a variance for that. The second is setback and block face. The addition will be set back slightly from the building line along Sydney, and that is to accommodate a very subtle accessibility entry. And the staff supports that as well. So that brings us to allowed differentiation, which under the policy, a project is allowed 2 elements of differentiation. The staff has identified 3. One is color, because there will be a differentiation of brick color, which is a design element to attempt to mitigate the fact that the second deviation would be percentage of solid to void, and there are very few windows on the Ohio elevation. And the final one is the fenestration, which needs to be under the policy similar in proportion to the surrounding buildings, which it does not do. So, the staff is recommending that preliminary review be granted with the condition that one of the 3 differentiations be dropped, and that there only be 2 allowed. Otherwise, we are in full support of the project. I think the director may have some things to add.
Say your say, and we'll have both of you right there captive.
I just want to say, reinforce a couple points that Jan made. In terms of the context for this project, it's an area of Fox Park that really could use a shot in the arm, and this is a substantial investment. The Fox Brothers building is very significant to the history of the neighborhood, and we're getting a rehab of that building in this case, which I think is highly important. I'd also reinforce that this is the first time we are using the contemporary new construction policy, and so part of the goal with that as we accumulate projects will be to sort of acquire wisdom as we go through that, the reviews under that policy, and see where there are gaps, where there are items that can be changed in the future. So what I would really want to emphasize here to the board is to see this policy in terms of the sort of the general goal and not be, I don't think we want to be so, at least from a director's perspective, I don't think we want to be so sort of bean counting about this. The fact is the Sydney Street facade, because of the amount of opening, the percentage of openings to void actually only has 2 items that are differentiated. The Ohio side has 3. The applicant has said they need that because of the need for conference room space, and that windows are incompatible with that. And overall, I would say I really don't want an issue of windows on one of the facades to impact the overall, the ability to get this important project done in the neighborhood, and see this valuable investment in the community. And with that, I will be open to questions, as will Jan.
So let's, so the three items again are color,
Color, fenestration, and percent of solid void. Fenestration being the proportions of the openings.
okay, and then percentage of solid to void. And what do we currently have?
I think that there's in the presentation for the architects, designers, they will have a very specific ratio,
Okay.
so.
Wasn't what I wanted.
Anything else, Tony?
No.
Anything on this side?
No, sir.
Jen, have we heard from the Alderwoman?
I thought you told me you had a support letter right before
I
we
thought I
started.
did.
We have heard from the Alderwoman. She is in strong support of the project. If we don't have that letter, I have an email from her. I guess we're getting our wires crossed here a little bit. She's in strong support, and I can submit the email if I didn't. We have that here.
Okay, it's a preliminary review. Your testimony that the Alderwoman strongly supports it is probably enough.
I would hope so.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we start off with an architect, which is always a good thing. Stacy Way.
Yeah, absolutely. The director can do this properly.
Ms. Way, I expected you to bring a big pallet of bricks in.
Oh, don't try me, I will.
Okay. So, this is
Thank you for being our new construction policy guinea
Yes, yeah,
pig.
it's that one.
Come on, you stupid machine. There we go.
Okay, these?
Oh, you mean the one that we can see
Okay.
is the only one that's out? Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Stacy Way with Christner Architects. I'm a managing partner at Christner and the project manager of the Rung new headquarters building. So if you're not familiar with Rung, it's a brand new nonprofit. It really helps women, it has a mission of helping women escape intergenerational poverty. So the new building will be a new headquarters for them where they are co-locating support services for women. Jan provided a lot of lovely context to the project, so I'll zip through these pretty quickly. But our project site on the screen is outlined in yellow. It's just south of Fox Park and right along Sydney. A beautiful glamour shot of the site. I think you've seen several of those. When we first started working on the project, we actually spent quite a bit of time in the archives downtown looking for historic photos and documentation of what previously existed on the site. And we were pleasantly surprised to find several documents indicating that there was previously a one-story administration and office building for the Fox Brothers Manufacturing Company, who manufactured most of the specialty millwork for all of South St. Louis. We were able to find even a few historic photos of the existing building. And as Jan mentioned, our intent with the existing building is to restore it within the Fox Park Historic District standards. So Rung, since it's a little bit of an unusual building type, we don't see them every day, there are several different programmatic areas that will be within the building. Additionally, the existing building only offers around 38,000 square feet, so we have a need for an additional 16,000 square feet on the site. The thing that's important to note in this is that the bottom three programmatic areas, the multimedia training rooms, the pre-function dining area, and the commercial kitchen, are really well suited to the new addition. They have the opportunity for column-free spaces. We have the potential for higher ceiling heights. We have quick access to all the rooftop equipment that will be required in the kitchen, and we have access to a loading dock. So it became very evident when we started working with the project that those three functions needed to be housed in the addition. And when we first started approaching the site, we have that lovely cell tower to contend with, which created part of the unusual shape to the addition. But when programming, we felt that it was really important to focus development along the corner of Sydney and Ohio. There's a history of empty corner buildings in this neighborhood, and re-energizing that corner and reestablishing it was really important for this project. We also wanted to make sure we were providing more of an urbanistic approach to the site programming, so we've located all of the parking internal to the site so that it's not on display and not at the forefront when you approach the site. For the addition, we've created a light touch connection to the existing building. So instead of glomming on to the brick facade, we have a very delicate glassy connection that really minimizes the interventions to that historic facade. We've also provided a single central entry at that connection that will allow visitors that are coming by car or by public transportation a quick and easy central access point to the building. And then lastly, as Jan mentioned, the entire addition will be wrapped in brick. And we really set out to create an articulated masonry facade that reflects the neighborhood and dissolves across the building as it responds to the spaces within. You've already seen the site plan. I won't spend time on that. And we brought floor plans in case there are any detailed questions about the programming of the building. Essentially, all of the public areas and core programmatic components are on the first floor, and all of the more private areas are on the second floor of the existing building. So when approaching the exterior, we spent a lot of time driving and walking through the neighborhood and really trying to understand what the context was there when it came to materials and articulation of facades. Fox Park has a very eclectic masonry palette. There's a predominance of red brick with a lot of browns and dark grays as well. So all of the photos on the screen are buildings that are within a 1 to 2 block radius of our site. And even when you look at the existing building, in photographs it might look like more of a flat red brick. There's really a lot of texture and elegance in the brick patterning and brick composition that's there. There's a mix of plum, red, and brown in that historic brick mix. So when it came to the new addition, we used those 3 colors and then we built on them with a band of darker brown that is really tied to a lot of the brown colors we were seeing within the neighborhood. The bottom 3 brick colors here are the 3 that came directly from the existing buildings. We went out to the site with bricks. Those brick colors match very closely to what is concurrent at the existing building. We're even specifying an iron spot brick, which has a slight speckling to it and matches what's there on the existing building. So the dark brown and the brown are the new colors that we're introducing. They form a band that accentuate and the accented panels of bricks. That will become more evident in just a second.
Thanks.
We've also, I should have mentioned this, we've also introduced some ins and outs with the brick patterning. So we're using a row lock course to highlight the transition between the main brick bars and then the top band, and a soldier course to cap the top of the building. And we've pushed and pulled up to 1 inch on the brick patterning between the different bands of color. So we add some additional texture and some additional playfulness to the facade of the addition. The windows are, of course, always an area of deep reflection and study when you're going into a neighborhood like this. And while the addition will be more of a contemporary building, we did try to look at the existing building and break down the rhythm and patterning of the windows on that warehouse building. So even though the windows appear to be more rectangular, they're really made up of 3 bays of tall vertical windows. And we took those subdivisions of the windows and created an ABCDEF pattern of window bays and expressed them in the addition in what we think is a very playful facade. The new addition being on the right. And if you extract that pattern, this is it extracted on the new addition. As you come closer to the existing building, the windows become larger and more closely replicate the proportion of the windows on the existing building. We think it's a nice nod of transitioning from the new to matching the more historic existing building. So, of course, Jan already showed a photograph of the rendering. As I mentioned, the darker brick band provides a kind of a frame, like a picture frame, to the more articulated brick masonry, and that darker brick band follows through the back of the building as well. So the textured brick and the patterning is really highlighted on Sydney and Ohio to provide a lot of playfulness and just fun and articulation to those who pass by. Another shot that shows the Ohio side in a little bit more detail. And then this is the courtyard of the building, so this is more internal to the site. So Jan went through the required compatibility. I'll focus on the allowed differentiation a little bit more. I know the Cultural Resources Office Their interpretation has led them to find 3 differentiated elements on our building. We acknowledge that the fenestration is intentionally differentiated, but it is rooted in a rationale of the existing building and the neighborhood. We find that the color and the percent of solid to void is very open to interpretation as it's written in the current policy. And we'd like to push back respectfully on some of the interpretations and challenge the Preservation Board to really consider what is in alignment with the policy and what is not currently. So I'll just talk a little bit more about the color. We already went through some of this, but as I mentioned previously, 3 of the 5 brick colors match the existing building. The remaining color is found predominantly on nearby blocks within a 1 to 2 block radius of the building. And in addition, there's a rich context of geometric brick patterning in Fox Park. So if you walk around the neighboring blocks, several buildings use accent patterns, accent squares, accents on the corner, 2 different brick mixes across the building to really add some diversity to their brick patterning. Although our brick patterning is not found one-for-one on any other building in the neighborhood, we think that it is reflectance of some of the character of the neighborhood, and we think it's a wonderful contribution to that rich texture. There's also a lot of context for the pushing and pulling of the bricks, especially in geometric patterns. Number 1 right here is the gatehouse to Fox Park just to the north. So it uses a strong linear pushing and pulling with accent bars in that structure as well. The fenestration, of course, we've already spoken about. And while this building, our new addition, does not utilize punched windows, as some of the other buildings in the neighborhood, it is more of a commercial building. It's not a warehouse building or a residential building. There's a strong context of storefront openings throughout the neighborhood on major commercial streets, especially in Gravois and Jefferson. Some of them were done with more care than others, but they do reflect some whimsy and playfulness in the patterning as well. The percent of solid to void, we have specific percentage points for each elevation. The existing building is on the left, and the new addition is on the right. So you can see that the south facade along Sydney, the new addition essentially matches the existing building. We have the exact same percent of solid to void. As we move to the Ohio side, which is the east side, our percent of solid to void does differentiate from the south elevation. And for us, it's a challenge for us to maintain 3 primary facades. The west facade is a primary facade, the south facade is primary, and we're essentially being asked to treat the east facade as a primary facade as well and maintain that same percentage. There is a somewhat strong contextual response in the neighborhood to corner buildings not maintaining all elevations as primary facades. And while our building is on the corner, there's obviously a more primary commercial corridor along Sydney than there is on Ohio. So we don't think it's all too unrealistic to treat the 2 elevations differently and not have the same expectation for percent of solid to void on both of them. Additionally, in going through the new policy, we found several different conflicting policy requirements where several different requirements, 3 of them are on the screen right now, note that window openings should reflect the interior and exterior patterns of use, which is exactly what we've done when we've located all of the windows along the new addition. They all directly correlate to what's happening behind them and will reflect energy and vitality and life when they are constructed. We have not introduced any false windows. We are not using spandrel glass. All of these will be pure windows where you can see people behind them. And as Jan mentioned, our building itself, the training rooms and a bay of toilet rooms as well are on the east facade, which has limited our ability to incorporate a significant amount of fenestration into those facades. It's of course possible to add more windows into a training room, but it is a multimedia training room, and we do want to have space for projection screens and whiteboards and stacking dividing partitions and hiding AV systems into the wall. So it becomes very challenging for us to add a lot of windows along that wall. Additionally, if we did add windows in several of these locations, they would essentially be fake windows. We would need to put spandrel glass on them to keep either the functions more private, as in the case of the restroom, or to keep daylight from impeding the multimedia functionality of the space. So, as I said, the window locations are predominantly tied to what's occurring within the building, and we think that the brick articulation adds a level of interest instead of putting a blank facade along Ohio Street. So again, the three elements that are being found as differentiated elements, we think that they combined add a lot of texture, interest, and playfulness to the facade of the addition, and that modifying them would be to the detriment of the proposed design. So we would like to request that the Preservation Board approve the project as designed without modifications that change our differentiated elements. And that's it. I'm happy to go back to any other images.
Questions on this side, commissioners? Commissioner Robinson is forming a question in his head. It will take several minutes for it to boot up.
No, not at this time.
Dave? Melanie?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Commissioners on this
Could you
side?
bring up the site plan, please?
Yeah.
Over here so you can see it. I came in a little late. Where did the buildings go that were here?
They're gone.
So-
They're proposed to be demolished.
Has that been approved? Is that part of this application or?
It is not. They were approved by director.
Preliminary review, so there's no application.
It was approved by the director directly? Like,
Yes.
We didn't get a chance to talk about that here?
They were metal buildings.
Now, there's a brick building back here.
Well, yeah, there's,
So I think this, shouldn't we have a say in that? There's an historical building on Victor Street that we should be talking about.
What I would suggest is maybe we talk about, since we've got the applicant here, if we could, Mike, is talk about the proposed design, and then I can come back and talk about the demolition piece again, if that's
Okay.
acceptable to the board.
Because the way I look at it, there's plenty of room to keep that building, and move the parking over, and or move the entry over, and we can park up there possibly. I know vegetable gardens are nice, but that building is part of that historic campus that you showed us probably at the beginning. Also, you talked about an urban solution. Was there a decision made not to actually hold this corner? I'm just wondering why we're not back from the corner, or we are back from the corner.
Yes, the finished floor of the existing building, we're matching that finished floor in the new addition, and it's about 40 inches above the sidewalk. So to provide an accessible entry along the south, we are setting the building back in order to navigate that grade change outside of the building. Additionally, just architecturally, we think it's a nice notion to let the existing building stand in the foreground when you approach that. So it almost gives it more prominence with the addition setback from it.
Which is subjective, so one could also argue it'd be nice, since we're in an urban setting, to get that back up on the street, and then this ramp thing could be dealt with still, I think, without giving up so much space. So those are the two things I noted, so thank you.
Commissioner Vines?
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Robinson, anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tom Pickle? Hey, Tom, how are you?
Doing well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tom Pickle. I'm Executive Director of DeSales Community Development. I'm not an architect, so I'm not going to debate the finer architectural points you're considering tonight. I just wanted to speak in strong support of the project. As you know, my organization has been investing in this neighborhood for decades, and much of it focused in the immediate part of Fox Park, the south part of Fox Park here, just within literally half a block of this site. And in 2016, we had the opportunity to acquire this property from the prior owners, the Walsh and Simmons Seating Company. And we thought that because it's such a prominent piece of property right in the heart of the neighborhood, it was being true to our mission to take the risk to acquire the property and control it, having no idea at that point what we would do with it or what would become of it. And we're very fortunate that last year we made the connection with Rung and actually closed on the sale of the property to Rung back in November of 2018. And I think I can say that when we acquired the property, not knowing what was going to become of it, we could only have wished for an outcome like you're seeing tonight, where a very strong nonprofit is coming in, proposing to invest $20 million in the physical redevelopment of the site, but just as importantly, the mission of the organization to provide personal and financial career development services for women to help them achieve economic self-sufficiency and sustainability is just going to provide a tremendous new asset for the neighborhood. I want to say that having been involved in the process for months now on the periphery, I should say, but I can say that Rung, their staff here, Leslie Gill, their board, and particularly the team from Christner Architects has, I think, done an outstanding and exemplary job of working with the neighborhood, working with the Preservation Board, as you pointed out, being the guinea pig for the compatible new construction process. I think they've done an outstanding job. And I just want to say on behalf of our organization, DeSales Community Development, we strongly support the project and would urge you to approve it as presented.
Questions for Mr. Pickle from this side?
What does your organization feel about the demolition of that historic building I mentioned?
I'm very familiar with this site. All the buildings, we've owned it for 2 years. There are really 3 buildings there. I think 2, we could probably all agree, are expendable, not contributing. The northern building is certainly the oldest building there. It is a brick building. The one thing I'd point out there is that building, aside from being pretty seriously compromised in an architectural sense, and you saw that from some of the slides, it has some serious structural deficiencies as well. You can just drive by the one lintel on the overhead door is at a noticeable angle, and if you get up on the roof of 2717 Sydney and look over there, you can see there's a big sway in the roof. It's masonry and wood joisted structure, and has had all kinds of jury rigging over the years to stabilize it, and I really don't think it's a feasible rehabilitation. Okay.
Thank you. Jay Reeves?
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Reeves. I'm chair of the Development Historic Standards Committee in Fox Park. We've been working with the contemporary new construction policy process, which has required that the design team and the owners come to us for a series of community meetings, and we've been very pleased with how that process has went. There's a letter on your desk that gives a much more flowery and kind of thoughtful response to why we support the project. And but I wanted to speak on my own account, not on the neighborhood's account, for a moment. As you mentioned, this is a project that's a guinea pig project for this process, and I think there's been some elements in this process that are going to become stumbling blocks as we go forward. And I was just really coming to see how this process goes tonight, and then also to offer a few comments of my own of what I've seen in this. I think that this project, our community sees that this project and the 3 deviations from that standard are still consistent with the neighborhood without detracting from the historic character or the urban fabric. I think CRO in this process is in a very difficult spot where we're asking our professionals who are really experts in historic buildings to evaluate contemporary buildings, which is tricky. And by doing so, they set up a series of rules where we'll have a certain amount of allowed deviations and non-allowed deviations. So the kind of thrust of my comment is to say, while it's really subjective to say, is this an appropriate contemporary building or not? I think that debate is a much more useful one, and in our discussions with the developer, have been much more fruitful than the semantics of is it 2 or is it 3? And I only bring that up because in this instance, they may technically have more deviations than the prescriptive process allows, but I think limiting the development because of 3 rather than 2 would be unfortunate. Conversely, I can imagine very easily a project that would have 1 or 2 deviations that would still be something that the neighborhood would say, we do not want this type of thing to come in because it would detract from that fabric. So my comment is a little bit more on process for you to consider. I also think it may be worth having the architect team make a comment about that building that you're asking about, because I believe there have been some sinkholes that have been discovered on that site as well that may be undermining the building. But again, I'm kind of curious to hear how the debate goes.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
So if you'll bear with me for a moment, I will, and maybe even more than a moment, because I'm so technically skilled here. See. All right. So I want to start by just addressing Mike's concerns about the demolitions. So this is the abandoned street of Iowa Avenue, or Iowa Street, I'm not sure which one it is. So we're looking north at Fox Park. And I'd like to make two points about the buildings here. One is it's quite a hodgepodge. So I actually went out with Jay Reeves, and we walked this site when the original idea of these demolitions as part of the redevelopment was proposed. We saw, and I found, and I'm not going to speak for Jay, but I found no architectural value in the metal building to the left. I also found little to no architectural value in the concrete building next to that. Now, as Jan said, and I'm going to see if these slides are going to be okay. As Jan said, so this was Iowa Street. So this used to be a street. And on the other side of this is an alley that backs up to the back of houses. So really, this was the primary street-facing facade. And I will acknowledge that this structure is a very nice building. I would also say, and this is going to be the main point, thrust of my presentation here, is that this entire row of buildings was deemed non-contributing in the National Register Historic District nomination for the DeSales National Register District. So in my mind, that is really the ultimate arbiter of value. Now, the one thing I will say as a possible proviso to that is, if you had a building that when they did this nomination was less than 50 years old, and now it's more than 50, so now it's something we would consider like a mid-century modern potentially, that's something a little different. But in this case, the surveyors who did the National Register nomination looked at these buildings. Let's see if I can get to the other building. And determined that they did not think they were contributing. And that was the primary basis for which I argued, or there really wasn't much of an argument, why I made the decision that I had the discretion to tell the applicant that if they applied for the demolition of these buildings, I would approve it. And this is a preservation review district. I don't see how these buildings could be considered high merit buildings when they were literally considered for the National Register and deemed non-contributing. So based on the preservation review district criteria, they're not even qualifying buildings. They are, by definition, non-contributing and as such eligible for demolition.
Wouldn't come before our committee, ever?
It doesn't have to. The ordinance says high merit buildings have to go to the Preservation Board for a review. Any building deemed less than high merit is the discretion of the director whether or not to bring them to the board or approve their demolition or deny their demolition. If they're denied, then the applicant can appeal back to the Preservation Board.
If I may speak freely,
Sure.
I'm just wondering if they missed it, because you remember there was another building on this site that, I don't know if it burned or if the storm knocked it down. It was all part of an industrial complex, so I don't know why they wouldn't this keeps the street face here on Victor Street. There is the nice building there. It's just shocking that this didn't make that registry. Is it possible they missed it?
Well, and this is the wonders of technology, I looked it up on my phone
Yeah.
while we were going through this, and I can show you where it says non-contributing on the map.
They actually wrote it on the building.
So it's on the map. They mapped every parcel as to whether the building on that parcel was contributing or non-contributing, and it came out as non-contributing.
So it's been our practice here, and regardless of, or independent of what you just talked about, that if you want to tear down a building, you better have a good plan for what you're going to do with it. And this plan shows a driveway going to a parking lot leading to a vegetable garden. So I don't know if that was part of your decision too. Did you consider what they wanted to build? Because you could see how that could all be scooched over and these buildings could be saved.
Well, I was looking at the overall, Mike, I was looking at the overall context of what was being proposed here.
Yes, sir.
You have the Fox Brothers building that's sitting vacant. That is a contributing building that these folks are prepared to rehabilitate in a very thoughtful way. You have the additional development along the street, and as much as we can go back and forth about 3 deviations or 2 deviations, at the end of the day, I do think that's going to really enliven Ohio Avenue, and I think that's something this neighborhood could really use. I don't live in this neighborhood. I don't work in this neighborhood. Mr. Pickle works in the neighborhood, has been doing redevelopment for decades. Jay Reeves has been a neighborhood leader for a long time, and they tell me that that they want this development to happen in their neighborhood, and they also tell me that non-contributing buildings on the National Register map they would like to see demolished, and they're going to propose that. I don't feel like I have a lot of I don't feel like I have a very good comeback for them. There was an original part of this proposal to do some different things along, I guess it's Victor. And they amended the proposal so that most of the Victor frontage, almost all of it, is green space, which is definitely an upgrade from the desolate parking lot we have now. So I'll be honest, there are demolitions that keep me up at night, some of them that I approve. This isn't one of, this, for me, this was not a hard decision on
Commissioner
these
Killeen, a final word?
non-contributing buildings.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, that concludes the testimony before us. Commissioner Richardson, have you got a motion?
I move that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval of the design as presented with the differentiations as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Richardson?
I think this looks like a great rehab of a historic building in the neighborhood, and a significant investment in the neighborhood, and a great thing for Fox Park.
Commissioner Killeen?
I want to protest the fact that we didn't get a chance to look at these buildings that are coming down. Just wanted to put that in the record. As far as the design goes and differentiation, I think the architects and the design, you guys did a nice job. I'm just bringing up these other points. And I still think this building should hold the corner better. So I would ask that you consider updating your motion, but probably won't. Commissioner Richardson.
The objection is noted. Any further comments?
I actually put a question to Commissioner Richardson.
It's not in order.
We do that all the time.
I like my motion.
Okay.
Further comments?
So, yeah, although we touched on the 3 items, from my point of view, I only see 2 items, because I think that the coloration of the brick, based on all of the examples they showed, actually is okay. And so really with that, I think that there are only 2 items, so they are within what's allowed. I will agree with Commissioner Killeen that I think the building could hug the street a little better, though not a deal breaker for me.
Comments on this side? Further comments on this side? I will say, if the new construction policy always brings us a presentation this thorough, then the policy is a good one. Okay, Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor that has been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Commissioners, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Preservation Board is back in order. We'll take agenda item B, 5344 Delmar.
More of the Cultural Resources Office.
How many items are you presenting tonight, Bethany?
2 items tonight. All right, so this is 5344 Delmar Boulevard. This is the preliminary review for the construction of 22-story townhouse units along Delmar Boulevard in the Central West End Historic District. The proposal is to construct units on the remaining lots, lots 21 through 40, in the Delmar subdivision. And here are the lots. I have a bigger map for the board. But the preliminary review tonight is for the plans for right here, these lots. These lots up here will be constructed to match the existing. So the preliminary, the plans for tonight are just for these. Lots 1 through 20 have completed units based on plans approved by the board in 2003. The proposed townhouses on lots 21 through 22 will be designed to match the units already built. Here's an example of the ones that are already built. Here's the proposed front elevation for the ones in the rear. The townhouses on lots 23 through 40 will have front entry garages on the ground floor, unlike the existing townhouses due to the lot size. The height of the proposed building is consistent with other buildings on the Delmar Place townhome subdivision on Delmar Boulevard. Floor heights will also be similar. The block has some variety of building scale, but the new design will conform to the existing units along the street. This elevation will be partially visible from Delmar, but mostly screened by the existing townhouses. The primary elevation facing the rear of the existing townhouses is mostly brick with faux half-timbering accent material. Windows on the proposed design are similar in the second floor in proportion to the windows on the existing set of townhouses, while the first floor front facade has less window area due to the placement of the garage, but will be minimally visible from the street.
Is that a front-facing garage?
Yes.
Is that 2 of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Here are the side elevations. Side and the rear. The side and rear elevations are proposed to be entirely sided with hardy board, with the end units to be sided in brick. Let me go back to the map. So the developer has told the Cultural Resources Office staff that he plans to start construction at the west end with lot 23 over here and continue east. And the last ones to be completed will be these, and then the ones in the front to match the existing. And that is in order to use this lot right here, which is currently empty, as a staging area for the building in order to get back here because it's pretty tight. And during that time, he will also produce a plan that matches the ones in the front because he does not have the original plans for the ones that are already existing. The Cultural Resource Office finds that 5344 Delmar Boulevard and accompanying lots are located in Central West End Certified Local Historic District, and the design of the 2 street visible units will comply with existing townhouses approved by the Preservation Board in 2003. And the design of the minimally visible new construction at the rear of the site generally complies with the Central West End Historic District standards for new construction. The Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval of the proposed design, subject to review of the final drawings and exterior materials by the Cultural Resources Office, and with the stipulation that no permit for the end units on lots 23 and 24 be approved until a permit for lots 21 through 22 has been approved.
Questions on this side?
Front-facing garages are okay.
In the rear only.
Yeah. You can't see them.
They're in the rear, got it.
Yeah, just in the rear. The ones in the front will have garages in the rear, just like the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Questions on this side?
I have one question.
Whoops.
Sorry, am I too late?
No, you're fine.
The original plans from '03, I guess you said it was?
Yes.
Do we have any renderings of that?
We do not.
Okay, so do you know if this is very close to what was originally proposed to have completed this site?
I do not know that. I would assume that they were probably going to match the ones in the front.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, does Jan know?
I was there in 2003.
And the decade before.
Okay, thank you very much.
Before that.
They were also front-facing garages, but they were excavated, so they went down into it. So that was the difference. But they're right up tied against there isn't even an alley back there. They're right up against the property line for Washington. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott Miller. Mr. Miller, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I was just here to answer any questions that someone might have.
Commissioners on the left side, any questions? Commissioners on the right side, any questions?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Commissioner Vines, have you got a motion?
I would like to pass on the motion.
Mr. Killeen, have you got a motion?
Pass.
Richardson, have you got a motion?
Yes, that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval to the proposed new construction with the stipulation that final designs and exterior materials be approved by CRO.
Is there a second, Commissioners? Second. Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Commissioners, we're gonna,
Exactly.
come on. Calling agenda item C,
Not do it.
621 to 33 North Skinker.
Shell station there.
Okay, many of you board members will remember this. You first saw it as a preliminary review application in, I think, 2016, 2017? 2017. To build a large multi-use building at the corner of Skinker and Delmar, on the northwest corner of Skinker and Delmar, which is what you're looking at there. And the site plan. At the time, there was a gas station on the property, which has been approved for demolition based on the board's preliminary approval. The reason that this is before you as a new application is that the design has changed somewhat from what the board had originally approved, particularly the Delmar elevation. So this is the rendering of the current proposal. I'll have a comparison in a minute. And this is the Skinker elevation. We would be looking southwest here. And there is parking at the back as was originally proposed. So the site plan really has not changed. This is the site plan. There's a few spaces of parking underneath the building, and the entry will be off of Skinker. One of the things that was required when the board saw the original design was that because of the scale of the building, they felt it was important to have the building broken up into vertical elements. Now, what you're seeing here is the current design at the top and the original that was approved by the board in 2017. So those elements have been deleted, although there has been, at the request of the staff, some articulation of the brick piers, and you'll see that better, I think, in the next drawing, to break it up into bays. The other improvements, in my opinion, have been the reduction of the tall corner glass area and the addition of a substantial cornice around the building. So staff is recommending that the revised design be approved as presented. I have a support letter from Alderman Navarro, and a support letter signed by a whole bunch of people from the neighborhood. All of the relevant neighborhood committees are also in support of the design. So as I said, we're asking that approval be granted given the usual conditions of final review by staff, exterior materials. Questions?
Questions on this side?
Did we get a letter from Joe Edwards on that?
He sits on the commercial committee, though.
It's coming, it's on the trolley.
On its way over,
We'll
got
we'll
it.
get it Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. Anything else on this side? Thank you very much. Okay, we've got, it looks like, the applicant.
Looks nice.
That's a good joke, I mean.
Lance McGolgan, I'm the architect for the project, just here in support
Okay.
and answer any questions.
Questions on this side? Questions on this side? Commissioner Fines, a question.
I just want to thank you on behalf of the commercial committee in Skinker to Bolivar, which I sit on. This is a very welcome addition to the neighborhood as far as I'm concerned. And I know that you guys have been very diligent and respectful of the process and working with the neighborhood, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're very excited to be part of this project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Visentino, have you got a motion?
Yes. I move that the board grant approval to the revised design as currently presented to the board with stipulation that final plans and exterior materials are reviewed and approved by Cultural Resources staff.
Second.
Made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Commissioners, we will reconstitute ourselves as a board to hear an appeal. Oh, I note the presence of a quorum. Calling agenda item D, 2320 Albion Place.
I'm Bethany Moore of the Cultural Resources Office, and I swear to tell the truth. I need to submit into the record the enabling ordinance 64689 as amended by 64925. And also the Lafayette Square Historic District Ordinance 69112, as well as the agenda and the PowerPoint.
Bethany, will your testimony be the truth?
It will.
Thank you. Proceed.
This is 2320 Albion Place in Lafayette Square. The Cultural Resources Office received a Citizen Service Bureau complaint about the installation of the non-compliant storm door without a permit. A violation letter was sent to the applicant, and the applicant then applied for a permit for the work already completed, and it was denied by the Cultural Resources Office because the door does not meet the Lafayette Square standards. According to the Lafayette Square standards, doors must be of wood, and metal doors of any type are prohibited on the front facade. And here is its location on the street. Here is Albion Place, and then the park is over here. And then here are some context pictures. Here is 2320, and then here are some of the houses next to it with wood stormer doors. And then text directly across the street.
One of those yours?
It's a gorgeous street.
As you can see, this is not a wood door. It is, in fact, iron and glass, and it is in stark contrast to the other stormer doors on Albion Place. The applicant is appealing the denial and has submitted an information sheet with her permit that details installation material and cost information, which I'll submit into the record. And I also have a letter of opposition from the neighborhood that I'll also submit into the record at this time. The Cultural Resource Office finds the door at 2320 Albion Place, being in Lafayette Square and of a contemporary design of metal and glass configuration, does not meet the standards. The Cultural Resource Office recommends that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the application as it does not comply with the Lafayette Square Historic District standards.
Questions on this side? On this side. Thank you. Okay, let's hear from the appellant first, please. Would be Kim Barrow.
Hi. I am Kim Barrow. I put up the door. I live at 2320 Albion Place. I apologize profusely.
Ms. Barrow, will your testimony be the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize profusely for making everybody come down here on this.
We were going to be here anyway.
Okay, well, thank you. I will say
And
this.
this is your right.
Okay, thank you. I will say this in my defense. When I contracted with Perpetua Iron to do the door, I went and looked at several other places that they had put doors up, asked the residents at those places if they had applied for a permit, was told they didn't need one. Perpetua basically told me it was up to me if I had to find out if I needed a permit. I signed the contract in March. I called literally 24 hours after I signed the contract and asked if I needed a building permit for a storm door and was told no by the woman who answered the phone. And unfortunately, I didn't know at the time that I needed to keep a record of this conversation. So it took 8 months.
Just to clarify your testimony, you called somebody in the city?
In the building permits office in City Hall.
Okay.
And I was told, no, I didn't need one, which matched what the owner of the one property in Compton Heights told me and another one on the Hill told me. Anyway, long story short, it took 8 months for Perpetua to build the door. It's a custom door. It cost me over $10,000. I put it up and immediately got notification that it was against the standards, at which point I said, well, there are, and I've counted them, at least 18 other metal and glass doors in Lafayette Square, some really beautiful ones. They're all wrought iron. When I did the door, I made sure it had fleur-de-lis, and I mean, I tried desperately to make this door fit the mode of Lafayette Square. I love living in Lafayette Square. I did not do this to aggravate my neighbors. It is the only metal door on Albion, but there are 17 other doors all within a couple blocks of me, and they're all in Lafayette Square. I will work with the Preservation Board to try and make whatever changes are necessary. I'm not in a financial position to pull down the door. I'll work with my neighbors as to what changes I could make, perhaps change the door itself to wood, but keep the header. I mean, I apologize. I did not know of this process. As a matter of fact, after I got the letter and I went down to get the building permit, the guy who waited on me said, you don't need a building permit for a storm door. And I showed him the letter. He said, oh, this is Cultural Resources. You have to go to them. I would love to keep my door. I am willing to make whatever changes I need to make, short of tearing the entire thing out, because I think at that point it would damage my property. I would also point out to the committee that I had my front steps redone and a whole bunch of other work done in November and December of this year. We pulled the permits. We did everything we were supposed to do.
Is there anything else you'd like to submit for?
No, sir.
For your case? Hang on just 1 second. Commissioners, questions on this side?
Was anything submitted concerning financial hardship?
Financial hardship? No, sir.
Questions on this side?
Yeah, you mentioned $10,000 for the door. Do you have an invoice or receipt
I
for that?
submitted it with the building permit.
Okay.
Questions? Need you, we'll call you back.
Thank you.
Suzanne Sessions.
Suzanne Sessions, 1831 Kennett Place in Lafayette Square. I was contacted by one of the neighbors on Albion when the doors were going up. They were up but not completed. I went over there and looked at them. Pardon me?
1 second. Is your testimony going to be the truth?
Is it going to be true?
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Okay. Proceed.
I would like to go back and say that at that time in November of 17, that was the first time I saw the doors myself. And I called Cultural Resource the next day to find out if the doors had come down for a permit, and I was told no. No permit was, asked for, no suggestion at that time to Cultural Resource. Cultural Resource approved the steps and the siding that had to be done. It is true that in Lafayette Square, in the last 50 years or so, we've had plenty of metal and glass doors, and most of those were done towards the end of the blocks on Whittemore and Albion. Mainly, I believe, for security reasons more than anything at the time, but I can't be sure. But since we have had a code is in 12, this occurs on our code in 12, that you cannot put up metal and glass doors. It's in our code as of that time. I don't know that we have seen any go up. I believe other people on the committee would say if they have, they haven't been able to catch them in time. We have to do anything like this within a year of the time anything is erected, or else it isn't viable. I greatly appreciate the fact that the doors she tried very hard to put up some nice-looking doors. I mean, if you're going to put them in another neighborhood, they would probably be just fine. But they do not belong in Lafayette Square. And I, too, have looked at these doors for the last 3 months, trying to see if there was a way that the owner could do something to them, that would put them back in code. As of right now, I haven't come up with a, suggestion for her. I have not talked to the owner before, and so I don't know. I went to the door twice when I was looking at them, but she was not at home at the time. So I don't know anything about it, about the circumstances, the cost, I'm not aware of. I do know that we have another incident in the square at the same time that came up, and that was for illegal vinyl windows that were put up on a duplex on Dolman. You also reviewed it yourselves in November, I believe it was, and at that time you caught the fact that there was a vinyl on the back showing on the rendering of the houses. The owner did not show when he came to us or he came to you the fact that he was going to be using vinyl windows on the side and back. Another neighbor of his brought it to his attention. He called me, this was in December, and I said, yes, what, you passed by us? And he said, well, but I didn't show what the material was on the windows. I said, Jason, you can't do that. You cannot use vinyl. You can use almost anything else but vinyl. And he said, well, okay, well, that's going to be a great eBay, buy for somebody then. So he is admitting to the fact that he's made a mistake, and he is willing to take these down. I don't want to see this continue, because if we let somebody get by with this, as far as these windows, these vinyl windows, or these metal and glass windows, in the case of these stormer doors, it opens it up for anybody else to be able to say, if she did it, I can do it. What's the difference? What would keep me from being able to do it? You've passed that, So That's my comment on it. I'm very frustrated because I don't believe that we got good response either from the Citizen Service Bureau when we put in our, concern about it. And this is a problem I have in general, but this has nothing to do with the Preservation Board tonight.
Bless you.
Right.
Okay, Linda Paulman, thank you. Every other letter except for the first P is perfectly written and legible, but you've disguised the P. You could have been anybody.
Okay, I'll be Dahlman today. Linda Paulman, and I will tell the truth, I live at 2011 Park Avenue, and I too am on the Development Committee, and this was not...
We will not need to hear about Jason's windows.
No, I'm not going into Jason's windows. This does not comply with our historic standards. It is marked throughout the neighborhood that we are a historic district. We have all of our codes online in the intranet within the neighborhood. If there were going to be any building or this type of an addition to the house, she should have come before the Development Committee, or she should have looked on our codes. To ask people in the Hill or in Compton Heights if it's okay to do it doesn't apply to our historic neighborhood. And we feel very strongly on the Development Committee, after spending so many hours, volunteer hours to rewrite codes, that it's important that everything within the district comply with our codes. That's it. Thank you.
Hold on just one second. Questions on this side?
Yes.
I understand the code and the way it's written, and it's very clear. The one question I have is the appellant mentioned that she did call the city and inquired about whether a permit was necessary and was told by someone there that it was not. So she did make a good faith effort, it sounds like. And I wanted to know if that factors into what do you have, what's the response to that?
Well, I think my response would be, did she indicate I'm living in Lafayette Square? Because the response would be quite different than I want to put a glass and metal door on my home if she lived in the Hill or somewhere else. So I think it's hard to be able to evaluate that conversation without actual specifics and also the name of the person that she talked to. Was that person qualified to give an answer? Was this actually Planning and Zoning Committee? Was it Preservation Board? So I don't think, frankly, that that's a relevant factor to determine whether this door should stay up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Comments on this side? Okay, good. Bethany, anything you want to add? Ms. Barrow, last word?
Well, again, I'm really sorry. I would not have done this if I had known it was going to make everybody angry. I think it's a beautiful door. I know it doesn't meet the standards. I would like to ask whether or not, because I have had someone come out, a professional wood guy, who said he can replace the door itself if the header can stay. Would that be acceptable? If there's no compromising, then I'm in a bad situation here.
Thank you, Ms. Barrow. Commissioners, that concludes our testimony in this appeal. Commissioner Visentainer, you're a voice of compassionate, firm, strong reason and conviction. Have you got a motion?
I move that the board uphold the director's denial, as the storm door does not comply with the historic district standards.
Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Fathman quietly seconds that motion, waving her hand. Discussion?
Can I hear the motion one more time, please?
The motion is to uphold the director's denial as the storm door does not comply with the Lafayette Square Historic District standards.
Thank you.
Sir?
I am interested in what Commissioner Richardson has to say about said door.
You mean Commissioner Stickler Richardson?
Yes, that
Okay.
particular commissioner.
He does not have to answer that, but if he cares to, Commissioner Richardson?
Well, I think it's pretty clear they're in violation of the code.
Is he making any gestures behind me? He's going to say anything else?
Don't want to know.
Comments on this side? Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded. This is an appeal, and I will call a roll. Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Visentainer, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Fathman, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioners, that is 6 yeses. The appeal is denied. The director's denial is upheld. Commissioners, this concludes agenda items A through D and brings us to special agenda item, which is the director's report. Bethany, would you talk to the appellant who may have some questions? Commissioners, you should know that Director Krasnov said to me, "Did you guys ask the previous director to give reports?" And we said, "No, we always understood clearly what she was up to." Just you, sir.
You're adding me out, Richard. Thanks a lot. All right, so this is the first one of these reports that I've done. So, a little bit like the contemporary new construction policy, I'm open to ideas that you guys have as to what else you might want to see, or if this is what you were looking for, or, you know, just in addition to what the content is here. So the way I'm going to structure this is I'm going to talk about items you're aware of already and sort of updates on things that have been to the Preservation Board before. I'm going to give a preview of a couple things that I think there's a good chance you're going to see in the near future. I got one staff decision that I think you're going to love that I made, especially after the last discussion about the demolition in Fox Park. And then I'm going to give an update on items that came before the board about creating new historic districts and such, and also an update on potential new districts and landmarks and standard revisions that we might be seeing in the near future. So with that, off we go. With that, off we go. Okay. Oh, we lost our screen over here.
The whole meeting.
The whole meeting is.
Oh,
going
really?
on, Yeah, that's why we've been turning around.
Because I'm naturally facing this way, so of course I wasn't at all attuned to that. Okay, so the first item I want to discuss is 232646 Allen Avenue. This was a preliminary, this is a approved building permit by the Preservation Board. It's in the McKinley Heights Local and National Register Historic District. The board approved it as a preliminary review in January of 17. The Crow office approved the building permit itself in January of 18. And then, unusually for us, the Preservation Board, the staff approval of the permit was appealed by the neighborhood, McKinley Heights Association. And at the May 26th Preservation Board meeting, that project was approved, or the appeal of the approved building permit was denied technically. So the building was able to move forward. My understanding from the applicants is that they intend to begin construction this spring. Sorry, going the wrong way. Okay, our next item is an approved demolition with subsequent construction. This is 2232 South Grand Boulevard in the Compton Heights Local Historic District. This was preliminarily approved by the Preservation Board in August of 2017, and Crow approved the building permit in January of 18. So the building on the right is the old YMCA. That was approved for demolition. And the building, on the left was the YMCA. The building on the right is the old Pelican building, shown in pre-rehabilitation state. And, oops. And voila.
That was quite a change.
I'm sorry?
That was quite a change.
I thought I repaired that quickly enough that you didn't notice, but you did. So Up above, you see the rendering or the elevation drawing that was shown to the Preservation Board. Down below, you see the pretty close to being completed apartment building. That should be completed in 2019 on the left. The Pelican building has been approved, has been rehabilitated. And in addition, I would note that it's the Domino's Pizza has moved in on the ground floor. You all remember we looked at a sign application for the Domino's. This is approved demolition with subsequent construction at 300 South Broadway in a preservation review district. This was preliminarily approved by the Preservation Board on December 18, 2017. That approval is valid for 2 years by our preliminary review policy. To date, the developer has been unsuccessful in obtaining financing. What you see here is the building on the left, which was the building proposed for demolition. The building on the corner there, the 8-story brick building. And on the right was the design submitted by the applicant, although the Preservation Board required that all facades be of glass when its approval was made. But I don't think we're going to see this building get constructed. Although, as it said, their preliminary review is still valid and they could still work on bringing that to fruition. The next is a denial of demolition by the Preservation Board previously. This is a denial at 7200 South Broadway, otherwise known as the Watkins block. This is the entire 7200 block of South Broadway in the Central Carondelet National Register Historic District. Crow staff denied this in August of 17. The board denied the appeal in October of 17. Since then, you all might recall that the prospective new owners of the building appeared at that Preservation Board meeting and talked about what their plans would be. They have moved ahead and bought the building despite the denial of the demolition. They have submitted an application for demolition that was less than a year after the board decision, so I told them that would have to be rescinded. They have not come back. They are now more than a year since the board decision. That would have been since October. They could have come back and applied again. So we'll see if they actually come forth with a demolition application. I have convened a group of neighborhood leaders, including the alderwoman, to talk about potential avenues we might find to see these buildings reused, and I hope that that brings to fruition the reuse of these contributing buildings to the National Register District.
Did you invite the new owner to that meeting?
The owner was not invited to that meeting.
Why?
The owner has made it very clear they have no intention to rehab those buildings.
Okay.
So, no. The next item is one that was before you relatively recently. This was the proposed demolition and subsequent construction at 4321 to 42 Shoto Boulevard in a preservation review district in the Forest Park Southeast neighborhood. You will recall that, on the right there, you see a massing study for the proposal. There's an industrial building here, in the middle of the block there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that from all the way over here. Anyway, the board said that that was a non-contributing building and allowed for its demolition. The board said that it was going to preliminarily deny the right to demolish the church building on the corner, which was deemed high merit. So I anticipate, based on communication with the applicant, that they are going to come back with another preliminary review. I anticipate that that proposal will bring a much more detailed design plan for what they want to do at the corner, for rather the entire structure that they want to build. Okay, this is a staff decision that the director made, that would be me, at 1800 Olive Street in a preservation review district. The building on the left that you see was a mid-century modern structure that was a bank building built in the early 1960s. The Salvation Army owns the tall residence building that you see in the picture on the right, and they came and proposed the demolition of the mid-century modern building for a parking lot. Excuse me for 1 second.
I don't remember this one.
So this is a preservation review district. Initially, my reaction to them, and this is going to take a minute or two, initially my reaction to them was, that because in Norbury Wayman's survey of St. Louis architecture from the early 1960s, he spoke of this building as having an important impact on the way architects viewed downtown development at the time. And I told him, therefore, I would consider this either a high merit or a merit building based on the ordinance, and therefore, you're going to, at minimum, need to go before the Preservation Board. He, the representative of Salvation Army, through their representative, Karen Bodie-Baxter, came back to me and said that we do not consider this building eligible for the National Register. I thought, okay. Then I reached out to some folks, I'm not going to name names, who also told me in the historic preservation world here in St. Louis, who also told me that they didn't think the building was significant. And at that point, I went back and looked at the ordinance, and the Preservation Review Ordinance does two things, in my mind, when it comes to demolitions for parking lots. It requires an evaluation, assuming the building will stand for 6 months. It requires that the building be evaluated for its significance as a high merit, qualifying or non-contributing. It also, and it would seem to me that there was no consensus as to that delineation. If you look at F and G in the ordinance, F under proposed subsequent construction, it says, I'm not going to quote it chapter and verse, but basically it says parking lots should be given due consideration when they're adjoining buildings that are looking to expand for parking. And under commonly controlled property, it says similar language. So in my judgment, the ordinance was clear in F and G and not clear in B. And therefore, I approved the demolition at the staff level. I should say that the Salvation Army also used historic tax credits to preserve the residence building next door. So,
Will the parking lot be used by Railton?
yes.
Okay.
It's for their staff, and they said that the folks who live at the Railton, some of them have cars and wanted off-street parking and needed off-street parking. This was a total judgment call. I really agonized over this decision to deny it or not, take it to the board or not, and when I did not feel there was a consensus that this was a merit or high merit building, I felt like the language about parking lots and commonly controlled property was more direct to this situation.
I don't know how you managed to get two pictures of that corner without a construction fence up there somewhere.
There is a construction fence in the one on the right.
Right, it's usually in the street.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Is the building gone now?
Yes. The second picture is with the building gone. I'll admit I cheated and took the first picture off of Google Earth. I have pictures of the building, but I felt like this picture was actually gave a better sense for what the building looked like. Okay, new projects. These are a couple projects that I anticipate may come to the board within the next couple months. This is 6190 Delmar Boulevard. This is the corner of Skinker and Delmar in the Skinker to Bolivar Catlin Track Parkview neighborhood. You can see on the right is the church there. You can see on the left down the street is the moonrise and the pageant. I did not get a picture of the trolley in this. Sorry about that.
So it was
I know that would have been appreciated.
a picture taken on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday,
I
most
guess it was one of
Thursdays,
those days.
some Fridays.
Yes, exactly. So the proposal here is for new construction for a bank branch. They've gone through a couple iterations here. They are actually using the contemporary new construction policy. We're sort of mid-process with them. They may be coming to the board with a proposal. It may look like the picture at the bottom, or it may look dramatically different by the time it gets to you guys.
You set the precedent.
Let's hope for the latter.
Okay, I'll pass that on. The next project is one that one of the board members will know well. This is 2300 LaSalle Street in the Lafayette Square Local Historic District. It's a new construction mixed-use project. The we are essentially reviewing it under the new neighborhood standards, even though technically they aren't in place yet. They will be very shortly. This is a project, you can see off in the kind of distance here is this shell of a very old stone structure that there is an owner who still, we understand, desires to rehabilitate, which would be great. And then the building here would be set back evenly or behind the line of that building. Actually, I think it's behind it, and then stretch out here down LaSalle. And that may be a project that you see in the near future. Another new project that you may or may not see is a building at 2913 Indiana Avenue in the Benton Park, local National Register Historic District. This is rehabilitation with new construction. This building was proposed for demolition twice. Once it was denied by our office, and once it was withdrawn by the applicant when we told them we would deny it. The applicant, I'm happy to say, this story has, I hope, a happy ending. A rehabber has bought the building with the intention of rehabbing it and building an addition on the rear. And I'm hoping that that happens because that would be a great outcome in the Benton Park neighborhood. Okay, now I'm going to switch gears and talk about historic creation of districts, creation of standards, creation of landmarks, etc. So this is the these three items are items that you all saw at the board within the last 6 months. The Tower Grove East Local Historic District, the Board of Aldermen will approve at its last meeting in April. I anticipate the mayoral signature after that. The Lafayette Square Historic Standards have been approved by the Board of Aldermen and are awaiting the mayor's signature, and that should happen any day now. And Al's Restaurant is now a city landmark. The mayor has signed it. I think we are still in the 30-day period technically before it becomes law, but it's essentially a city landmark. Here is a list of potential new local landmarks, local historic districts, or new historic district standards that are being discussed or thought of in various parts of the city. There are two projects that we actually have working drafts of petitions in our office, but they're not complete yet. One is for Midtown Churches. Actually, this one, I've been very tardy on this, is a leftover from when Betsy was here. This is 3 churches in the area around, say, Olive or Locust and Leffingwell. This would be a cultural nomination, although at least one of the churches is really a very beautiful building, if not 2 of them. It's primarily recognizing the importance of those churches culturally as important components of the African American community and the liturgical community here in St. Louis. The next one down, I should have put the address here. It's a house in Forest Park Southeast, previously owned by Oscar Waring, who was the first principal of Sumner High School. The owner very much would like it made into a city landmark because of that distinction, which Andrew Weil also has been a strong proponent of. That is the item you're most likely to see soonest, I think, although it needs to go to the Planning Commission first. The next item down is a building at 4460 South Spring Avenue. That is a rural house type that is stuck in an urban neighborhood because it was built before there were streets there. We know this in part because we have a picture of it with a cow in front. This is a building that is in the 25th Ward. The 25th Ward Alderman, Shane Cohn, had a building that had to be demolished because it was too far gone. That was a rural house type. And he has expressed interest in potentially landmarking that building. The Compton Hill Historic District is working on revisions to their standards, which is great. The Dutch, there's some interest in a Dutchtown South local historic district. That really has not gotten started, so that's not something you're going to see soon, I would say, but it could be something you see in the future. And finally, there's a church at Delmar and Pendleton. I think it's Delmar and Pendleton. Yes. Is that right? The Galilee Church. I, along with Bethany, met with the owner as recently as last week. They are very interested in becoming a city landmark. It's a beautiful Richardsonian Romanesque building. They also have been there for, I think, 120 years at that same, they've been a congregation for 120 years, but have been at that location since the 1940s. So they may be nominated both as a cultural, for their cultural institutional value and for their architecture of their building.
It's a gorgeous church.
Yeah. And that concludes what I thought would be a first version of an executive director's report. I think in the future, these reports may be shorter. There's a lot of like catch-up here that I won't necessarily have to bring back every month.
Let's see, commissioners on this side, what did you think? Do we keep doing this?
Yeah.
Commissioners on this side, comments?
I thought it was great. One thing is, you'll cover in the future if there are any like appeals to the planning commission and things like that? Like were we appealed?
Yes, in fact, I don't know how I managed not to put this in here. I do have another small addendum to this that I'll do verbally. I think I told Don I wouldn't do this. Anyway, it's now on TV, so he'll see it. But the 2205 Lynch Street demolition was, the planning commission chose not to review it, and they're still in their 30-day period where they can go to circuit court and file against the preservation board. And at this point, that hasn't happened, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Anything else, commissioners?
I thought it was very well done. Thank you.
Good work. Commissioners, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Hearing no objection, we stand adjourned. Commissioners, thank you, staff.